All right, we'll go ahead and get started here in just a minute. We'll let people kind of trickle in, and you can use the chat on the side. I can see those messages, and you can start posting in questions that you have for me. I'm sure we've got Max and other members of the team tuning in who might post questions as well that they've collected from Discord. So I'll wait for some questions to roll in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, I just tweeted out the link, and I think we're probably about ready. Max is saying he shared a link with me in Slack for questions from the community. All right, quite a few questions in here. Okay, looks like we got enough people to get started. So I'll start with the questions in the chat, and then I'll pull from the questions that everyone submitted to our to the community in Discord. Okay, getting started. From Dan Wild, he says, I've been wondering about the use case for MFT/Hifi as a whole. I know it's going to be governance, but want to know is that its only use. So right now, as we know, the MFT token has not been baked into any aspect of the protocol. And the easiest and most obvious place that we'll be baking it in is governance. And so there are a couple different governance models that we've looked at, and a couple different utility models. Some interesting ones I think are, you end up using your token for rewards. You end up using your token for a safety net. I think MakerDAO is a good example of that. And another one is collateral. When you look at synthetics, they use their token heavily for collateral within their system. So those are kind of like the obvious use cases that we could put MFT into. And so will it be used for all of those? It's a question I'd like to avoid answering because the regulatory space around all of this is very different today than when we started. And I expect we'll have additional clarity by the time we would be proposing these. The nice thing is that as we set up our governance system and framework, any sort of idea can be considered for adoption. And I expect that DAOs in general will morph as new DAOs come up with novel ideas that seem to have regulatory clarity. I expect there will be a constant innovation around the utility for any system, including ours. So I think that's how I'd answer that question. First step, though, is getting governance and control of the protocol and getting the protocol to a mature state where we feel comfortable and safe that we're willing to park our own funds on it and not become one of these headlines that we seem to have almost every week within DeFi. So, all right. Why are Hifi values so down? I assume that's a price question. I'll answer this the same way I answered it to my brother-in-law. Typically, the price goes down whenever there are more people selling the token than there are buying it. And the price will go up when there are more people buying it than are selling it. And that's a snarky way of me telling you markets are difficult to predict. And we all have aligned incentives here, hoping that we can add value to Hifi through the MFT token. That is kind of what aligns all of our incentives. And so I can't tell you. I don't know why the token had gone as high as it did. It seemed like we got picked up by influencers and saw it as a great opportunity. So I personally am super optimistic about the outcomes we'll have here at Hifi. We're sitting on a lot of intellectual work that we've done over the last several years. And I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see that harvested out. An update on the token swap. Yeah. If I were to bet, I'd say token swap definitely happening next year. What part of next year will be determined by essentially what priorities we have show up. What I mean by that is there's a lot of opportunities that we're sitting in front of, and some of those opportunities I think will benefit us at token swap, and so they would need to be executed on before token swap. But there's some internal discussions, discussing exactly when the token swap happens. There's a lot of work that needs to go into that, specifically coordinating with the exchanges. My feelings are we probably announced that a little bit too early because we do know it's coming, and we have focused mostly on utility rather than the swap. The swap is kind of this trivial thing where we're changing the marketing name of the token and then allowing people to have ample time to kind of transition over and then bake it into the protocol. Hopefully as part of a safety backstop for the whole protocol. And so there are some properties of the token that have to change before that can take place. So for where we're at right now, the earliest it could happen is probably, I would expect 3 months. The latest I expect it to happen would be 9. And then new information or priorities would obviously impact that. I don't necessarily see the token swap itself as the thing that's going to like catalyze any type of excitement. It's everything that's not the token swap that's going to be delivered at the same time. So specifically around the token economics and delivering V1 onto mainnet. What relationship will Sabler and Hifi have in the future? Well, Hifi owns Sabler, and if you look at our roadmap on the website, I actually have it up. You can see that one of the last item on the roadmap says iterating on top of Sabler. So Sabler has seen phenomenal growth. Really, I think when I look at Sabler, we're really at the intersection of a product that has product market fit, that is naturally growing. We see tremendous growth there. It seems to be the de facto choice for protocols and just crypto companies in general to vest to investors. It takes a burden off of administration work for people who use it. They don't have to do like monthly batches of transactions. And so I think we've really found great product market fit there. Our relationship with them is to uh, ideally, without getting ahead of myself, uh, I hope we continue to grow Sabler. It's the thing, it's the topic which we have other outside parties reaching out to us to discuss with us sort of the future of payments, the future of crypto in general. Um, some larger names it's not really helpful to uh, mention who they are, but it's garnered quite a bit of attention. We've seen that there are other players in the space like Superfluid who also are getting into the streaming area. Um, and so, yeah, I just expect that we'll iterate there. I expect that, we are really want to push the boundaries on what can be considered collateral. I think it would be really enabling for teams and investors uh, to unlock any collateral. Sabler streams being one type of high conviction collateral. Anytime you can take a high conviction asset that people hold that is illiquid and add liquidity to it, let them borrow against it, I think is a huge, huge win. So, um, yeah, that's kind of where I see things going there. What high-fi functionalities do you consider to be an advantage over competitors? Um, Today, I think the advantages we have, if so we can position ourselves into broader lending category, or we can position ourselves against other fixed rate lending solutions. Right now, in the broader lending categories, Hi-Fi is not winning. We have 100,000 or $105,000 of liquidity on a pre-production release of our protocol. Hi-Fi is not trying to win there. I think you'll see us trying to win whenever you see some really novel and creative incentives being thrown out to grab attention. This is not the phase of development we're in. And so what I think you would expect over this phase is uh, not these flashy try to grab everyone's attention type of marketing, but the continued steady investment into our infrastructure that gives us the rock solid foundation to go and do really interesting things on top of the lending protocol. Um, so then if I but so now maybe I should take the future tense version of that. What do I imagine is going to be some of the competitive advantages that HiFi will have against specifically other fixed rate lending protocols? Something that I think that we have internal to our team is a lot more creativity than most of the crypto space broadly. And maybe it doesn't look like that during this sort of building, waiting, patience phase. But our team is incredibly talented, incredibly creative. And so what I would expect is this is when you show up at Hi-Fi, there's a couple like high level principles that I use to steer the direction of the company today. One is my thesis, and I feel very strongly about this, and it likely will be, this is, we will live or die by this, is that generally speaking, people, when dealing with their money, want to feel two things. First, they want to feel intelligent about how they are allocating their money. And second, they want to feel safe. So, and maybe those two priorities are swapped. Maybe they first want to feel safe and then they want to feel intelligent. But regardless, those two for me are inseparable. And so when you come to Hifi, you've got to meet those two checkbox um, before anything else. And so the uh, the next part I think is a differentiator, because I think everybody will try to help market to helping people feel those two things of safety and intelligence, and there's various ways we can accomplish that. But uh, the third thing that I think will separate us apart from everybody else is that you need to come to Hi-Fi and do something that is not possible to do anywhere else in all of DeFi. And we've got some um, really good plans on that. And I think if you look at our roadmap, we have this section called experimenting with what can be considered collateral. And I think that's where we will move in the most interesting directions, is once we've got this thing like baked in, the team is beginning the process of working on formal verification for the protocol. In addition to some minor changes that will be made and then upgraded with the Polygon release. So as soon as those changes are made, we have formal verification. We get a very legitimate third-party audit. I think we're gonna then we have like the stages set for us to come and perform. And what we want to perform is for people to just have their heads explode. I think when I've introduced the idea of just being able to borrow against the future stream of a Sabler stream, I've in the investors I've talked to, they're just like, wow, like that's really powerful. And it enables things from like real-time finance from employers all the way to just being able to stay in your high conviction assets and have more liquidity for additional investments. And so I think there's going to be, Sabler is one example. There's probably like four other examples that I'll be excited to roll out as soon as the stage is set. So yeah, do something here that you can't do anywhere else in all of DeFi. And because we own Sabler, the stage is set to where we can really dominate and take advantage of the $1.3 billion of value that are currently streaming through that protocol. So I do expect sort of this this phase where we're kind of just under the radar. We're going to watch some of our competition. We see Notional right now, essentially just paying people to use their protocol. And they have that advantage because they created a new token and they have a clean slate. We don't necessarily have that advantage. I don't necessarily think it's not part of our strategy either. But that is not sustainable. It is something that can last for several years. I think, there's most money in this space is mercenary. It will show up, extract value, and then move on to the next thing. And so you're going to need something more lasting. It is an effective token distribution if you're just trying to get your token out into lots of people's hands. So to summarize, you should be able to come to Hi-Fi, feel safe, and feel intelligent about how you're deploying your money. And you should be able to do something here that you can't do anywhere else in all of DeFi. That's what's going to drive people to use us. My broad thesis on the fixed rate lending in general, I don't think we're quite there we know we're not quite there. Variable rate lending is the dominant debt instrument in DeFi. Whereas in the financial world, fixed rate lending is where most of the world parks its debt. So I expect that over the next 5 years, we will see a transition from these compound and Aave variable rate lending solutions being the dominant force that has all this value locked behind it, to becoming more in line with what the traditional financial world is used to operating under, because it gives people a predictable outcome. And when you're running a business or a hedge fund or you're an institutional type participant in DeFi, you need predictability. And so there's no doubt in my mind over the next 5 years that fixed rate lending will start to creep up on these variable rate lending protocols. Um, so I think we're in a really good position. Hifi is going to be a part of it. I don't think it's going to be a zero sum game. So some really interesting times ahead. Will MFT be listed on other exchanges soon, like Coinbase or others? I mean, generally, I hope so. I think the way that you get there, excuse me, I think the way that you get there really is creating utility in a community and a demand for it. One thing a lot of us didn't see is the SHIB token coming out of nowhere. And when Binance listed it, they had a lot of flack from sort of traditional crypto people. And CZ came out and said, look, we have never seen so much demand for a token like this. And so if you're feeling like you're that we're listing this meme token out of nowhere, it's just because you're not connected to the same circles. And so yeah, I think if we create the demand, I think the listings will come. I think we're in a pretty healthy place right now. I personally am not trying to push for it, or I'm not seeking out opportunities to get onto exchanges. I think over the next year, there's going to be some natural growth and excitement that will catalyze those conversations. Curious about the next roadmap for Hifi. Please tell us. Absolutely. Well, our existing roadmap is actually pretty good. So we've got the V0 MVP. We sort of inserted, this public preview. We need a phase of time of testing with real money before we go on to mainnet. And we have a lot that we're testing here. We've got our PRB math library. We've got the automated market maker that is specific, thanks to Dan Robinson and his work in yield space. We've adapted a similar AMM, but that uses our PRB math library. The multi-collateral vaults, something that V0 had that was wrong, or not wrong, but like that was really lacking, is this ability for liquidity providers to be able to show up and then exit without needing to wait until the expiry period of a maturity date. And then the multi-collateral vaults, which is really, really powerful, meaning that you borrow against the entire basket of assets within the protocol. Today on Polygon, we only have 2 assets listed, but the concept is still being tested there. So that is, so there's like, one of the reasons that it's taken us 8-9 months to get here, which, by the way, myself, Paul, every person on the team internally, our own internal expectations were not met. We're historically bad at predicting the future, and that's one thing that remains consistent. And so but we have been very principally based in our development, and this is something that, like, it's kind of I don't think this is going to change. Is I don't listen to people in the community who want to cut corners. There is a headline every single week within this space as to why it's it's potentially a $50 million mistake. And now, even though we're not cutting corners, we still may end up with a 0-day vulnerability. But that's exactly what this period of time and as a public preview is here to do. Is we would rather have somebody show up and drain $100,000 out of the protocol today than $100 million in a year's time, when we really put on the gas and grow. So if you're not using or participating in the public preview and you are an MFT holder, you're really doing yourself a disfavor. You're not contributing to where we are at today. And so I encourage you to do so if you really want to invest in kind of the long term of this project. And so moving forward, new information will bump back priorities always. And the priorities that we have internally is we're never going to move forward unless we are comfortable putting our own money in the protocol. And we are not going to skimp when it comes to security, when it comes to the safety of the funds within the system. And so there are, it's not a fun game to lose at. And so we would rather err on the side of caution. And I don't make my team work weekends. I don't push them to work overtime. We could move faster, but every time I think about the idea of having like Paul be tired as he's writing a brand new math library, as he's doing sort of these advanced calculations and algorithms for the protocol, I just think, you know what? I would rather wait and be able to sleep at night knowing that the engineers who built this all were well rested and had time to think and had time to sort of submit their work and to go and sleep for 2 weeks thinking about the work they had done and then come back and make changes to it, and that we created a very, very safe community and company that allows them that privilege, because then that will allow us the privilege of having more confidence than all the other protocols out there. And I think this will be a differentiator. I don't think you need to be first. I think you need to be the safest. And I think that's the single thing that threatens the entire space as a whole is and of some really interesting ideas around composability of different DeFi protocols is we thought, and you go back and look at our white paper, we thought for a hot second that, oh man, all these really cool protocols are coming out and we could add them as collaterals. But the more complex a protocol is, the less willing I am and the less interested I am in having that be a part of a protocol that might impact my position in a different part of that protocol. And so I think I think we really need to be cautious here on what pressure we put on the team internally and what we really stand for here at Hifi. We've worked really, really diligently in creating this brand to be a brand similar to Coinbase, which is Coinbase is the real deal. You go talk to their engineers, those engineers, they talk about the custody, they talk about like how internal security is managed at Coinbase, and it's legitimate. And typically you can go to employees and it's, there's a facade there. And so with the culture that we've tried to create here is when you hear about Hifi, and as we're a young brand, we're still establishing ourselves, you should see it as legitimate. Now, we may choose to do more fun, more exploratory type things in the future under different brands, but the Hifi brand is going to be the foundation of everything we do. We look at Sabler, and you look at, well, the utility that we can add to Sabler is being able to borrow against the future value of your streams. Well, guess what? The work that we do here at Hifi is going to be the foundation that Sabler is able to leverage in adding utility to that community. So it's really important that we get this right. I'm willing to be patient with it. And there's only one aspect that would really change this, and that's Runway. So at the end of the day, if you take all the time in the world to try and build this thing and you never ship it, you likely just die because you run out of money. And we're in the fortunate position where our Runway, almost since I took over, has maintained some level of at least 2 years in stablecoin for all of our expenses. And so we've been very fortunate in the investment strategy we've taken with the Treasury. We've had a couple really big wins. And I don't pretend that I'm not grateful that we have that privilege. It's afforded us to not have to, rush into a token swap where we needed to print more tokens and allocate them to the team. I think when I look back and zoom out, I'm really impressed with our ability to sustain ourselves from our own means and not have to come to token holders and ask for additional resources. So that's been my North Star. Internal resources, can we continue? And so kind of the report on where we're at financially is last review, same place. We maintain approximately 2 years worth of runway. I think we probably dropped just below that because we just hired 2 additional people. We've added to our administrative team. We stole an accountant from KPMG and brought him over internally to really help us with the back office stuff and make sure that everything is right in line for where it needs to be. That's also enabled a lot more time for me to spend on the product, and time for Ricky to help guide us in our strategy. So Runway is still good. We've added a little bit of growth to the team, and we hope to continue to grow. And I say hope because we'll continue to add to the team specifically around smart contract engineers. It's the only way we'll really accelerate our engineering at this point. And really pleased with the team we have. Every single one of them was a huge contributor to this previous release. And so very optimistic. How big is the team right now? I think we're at a dozen. I think there's 12 of us internally, about half of those on engineering. And so, yeah, so I think that's where we're at. I hope to double it next year if things go well for us on a resource standpoint. I heard that the Hifi team studied the NFT lending protocol last September, but when can we see this? V1, V2, or are you planning to just bury it? Well, we did just bury it because at a certain point, I thought that this public preview would come probably 3 or 4 months ago. And at about that point, I looked around at how we were allocating resources internally, and we had 1 or 2 projects that the team was working on in addition to the fixed rate lending protocol. And I said, okay, it's time to do all hands on deck. And so we brought everyone back. Everybody has been focused entirely on the fixed rate lending protocol. And so any other project that you heard rumor of or any sort of product there got the back shelf. So yeah. Did you know KuCoin was going to list MFT? KuCoin is a great exchange, and that was awesome to see happen. I think no, I didn't. Like there was no communication there. Typically, we have an open line of communication with each of the major exchanges, and in this case, we'll probably establish one over the next several months, especially since we have a impending token swap coming up, and we want to make sure that they have ample opportunity to prepare and that we're not throwing it on them with any sort of surprises. So yeah, did I know about it ahead of time? Nope. But this is actually what I prefer. I prefer not to know about it, and I love to see exchanges that take the initiative there. And so really pleased to be a part of the KuCoin ecosystem and glad that they added us. I think if you look at MFT volumes across the world, it's a huge revenue source for these exchanges. So I'm not surprised. And I think that we will continue to add to exchanges because we've got the resources where we're going to be around for quite a while and eventually have sort of a perpetual sustainable model here. So I think in time we'll be everywhere. Do I think that the app would benefit from a wallet? No. I think teams that do wallets, it's typically because they have something special. I know like the Safe Moon team, for example, is doing their own wallet, but every time you sell your Safe Moon, you forfeit 10% of the amount. And I think that's sort of needs its own wallet and exchange. So is the Amazon partnership true? No. Amazon is not interested in crypto in outside of an infrastructure perspective. So we were featured in an Amazon AWS article because we use their infrastructure for managing our internal processes. And so no partnership there. So okay, so saying that a wallet could notify users of maturity dates automatically in return and send funds notify APIs are low, stake MFT, etc., as well as access to the platform. So what you're describing is actually what I see as great third-party tools and utilities that should be built on top of our protocol in time. I don't think that Hifi should be the one to do those. And I'll use MakerDAO as an example. MakerDAO has stayed extremely focused. And for example, they could send out price alerts when Ethereum is crashing. That way people could come back to their CDPs. But as soon as you do that, you introduce a level of centralization and reliance and a relationship with your customers that I don't think that DeFi is ready for. If you put in an email and are relying on us to warn you of market conditions, and our email provider, goes down that day, you're going to come after us, and you're going to want us to be responsible for what you ultimately have to own. And so I don't think it's the right relationship to set with end users. Now, there's DeFi Saver and other tools out there that kind of will manage your collateralized debt positions for you. I hope there'll be some integrations there in the future. I hope that most of this stuff ends up being automated as much as possible. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my thoughts on those features. Yeah, if you build a wallet that does that, I'll promote you and I'll integrate with you. But building a wallet's not a trivial thing, especially since MetaMask has changed their license, and you can't just fork that as a foundation. Token swap ratio options. Okay, so this comes down to a conversation around unit bias. So we can, so we have, we got delisted from, you'll recall, it's been quite a while, from the market BTC MFT. And the reason that we got delisted that was cited from the Binance team was the unit economics between the value of MFT versus the value of Bitcoin. The level of precision that their exchange supports and would continue to support in the future doesn't really do well with really low denominated or really precise token values. So the thought is, hey, we like being paired with Bitcoin as a trading pair. It increases volume. It's good for the exchange. It's good for us because lots of people in the space hold large chunks of their wealth in Bitcoin, and it gives them direct access to our token. Wonderful. And that helps with liquidity too for when you're buying, so there could be less slippage and selling. So I think the answer there is like, what are our options? So what are the options? Well, you just typically choose a base 10. So we can do the token swap and reduce it by a 1 to 10, 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000, and we've explored all these. Unfortunately, one of the truths of the space is that unit bias is real. People really like low. People like to imagine, tokens that are worth sub-penny values going to become worth hundreds of dollars, and likely they imagine this because there are stories where this kind of becomes true, where. But at a certain point, token values and these things become very difficult to reason about when you're wanting to be serious about using these as financial tools, or just reason about as a governance tool. So there's a balance to be had there. It's not where my brain is at right now. We had a lot of discussions earlier, and as soon as the team came focused 100% on the lending protocol, we just kind of dropped those discussions because the governance is going to come. So there's still a lot of work to do there. And what I'll say is that I'm somebody who likes to listen to users. And because I understand that unit bias is real, I probably am today of the opinion that we should continue to be a beneficiary of unit bias. So what that means is less of a split than on the spectrum of less of a split rather than more. So if let's say that MFT is worth 2 cents at the time of the token swap, we can basically make the split, have each Hifi token be worth 20 cents, $2, $20, and so that would be probably a case for just doing a 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. So which would put you at $2 or $20. So Um, what is the next most exciting thing that we as users and investors can get excited about? It's a really good question. Mostly because I know that I'm not gonna answer it with everything that I know, and this is where I have to, like, play this game of, like, posturing and, like, I need to give you an answer that's, like, good enough, like, you need to be excited about the future. We certainly are really excited about the future internally, but, something that I know is that, um, marketing is important, and how you deliver an idea and a message to an audience is really, really important, and so now is not the time to make a big new announcement about something exciting. Um, and so but I think there is enough now to be excited about. And so where I would keep my eye is that here we have a team that's working incessantly to create a generalized lending protocol for any type of collateralizable, if that's a word. But basically, like we're going to see the mass financialization of everything, and as the trends push people into a metaverse and push people into sort of this digital world, and we become more comfortable with NFTs, uh, and we get broader adoption in the space. I see that, metaverse and gaming is what are bringing people actually into crypto, and continuing to sort of overflow into DeFi. DeFi is actually the smallest segment of cryptocurrency, and I kind of like break it up into metaverse, gaming. Then you've got just like pure speculation, and then you've got DeFi. And DeFi is the smallest. It's the most complex. It's where people stand to lose the most. And then beyond that, you have some like infrastructure use cases, like supply chain type stuff, and that would be like in another category. And so, no, HiFi is not going to build its own metaverse, but I would like HiFi to be positioned in such a way that as the metaverse grows, you've got Gemini and the Winklevi twins trying to compete against a walled garden that Meta and Mark Zuckerberg are building. What a like a battle for the centuries! It is going to be such a fun economic storyline that we get to have front row seats on. And where I want HiFi to be is to be compatible with all of these different metaverses. We've got uh, Mana, you've got Sand. There's like a whole bunch of these different ecosystems. I expect Microsoft, they announced their own metaverse. So if you are uh, sitting on top of a generalized lending protocol, and that you have been exploring from the very early stages, ways to borrow against NFTs, ways to financialize the entire NFT space. Um, I feel pretty confident that you're sitting in a place that has a lot of opportunity. People have these high conviction assets that have zero liquidity, and if we can be the 0 to 1 for them, that's going to drive a lot of value to our ecosystem. And so I don't want to be a metaverse. I want to be the bank in every metaverse, and I want to be the permissionless protocol that unlocks value to you, so that you can both have your digital world assets that are relevant to you from a cultural perspective, and borrow against them to bring back into the real world assets that help you pay bills um, and feed families. So from very early, I used MakerDAO to finance my minivan. I've been through the painful process that it was. I really feel like DeFi is so painful to use that we've got a long way to go. And we have huge opportunities and upside with all these big companies that are now looking at crypto and saying, like, hey, this is where we want to be. Visa wants to, make blockchain part of their rails and then integrate with all their payment providers because it helps them save money um, across transferring money across borders. And so yeah, blockchain is here to stay, DeFi is here to stay, and we want to be a big participant as the space continues to grow. So I think there's a lot to look forward there. And so the operative, like what you should walk away here is this team is going to financialize parts of the economy that may seem silly today, but are rather legitimate. If it can be tokenized and it can hold value, and there's a liquid enough market, that makes an excellent collateral source. And we want to be on the forefront, be pioneers in experimenting with those collaterals and finding what the limits of that whole space is. Okay, so I've got a couple. I'm going to try and blow through. Is there a plan to issue a bug bounty and to incentivize testing? Yes. And the plan is, basically to just move slowly. Like I'm not interested in running really fast. Our team is kind of at its bandwidth right now. We need to grow a little bit. But yeah, we'll issue a bug bounty. If you can steal my money on my protocol, I'll give you money. We just don't have a formal bounty. I may even offer you a job. So if you can do it, I think it would still be well worth your time. Or at least I will make it well worth your time. If now there are several full lending cycles to be tested, it will probably take a while. Will tokenomics economics and TokenSwap be developed and prepared? Meanwhile, yeah, so there's a couple things happening in the background right now. So we're working on formal verification, third-party audit, and during some of this process, there's downtime on our team internally, and so that enables us to sort of spin up the governance. Some of that is sort of like prepackaged, like we can use other governance modules. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel on governance, so we'll likely fork Governor Bravo from Compound, or we will we'll be using with Tally for collecting off-chain sentiment of the community. And so these things can be spun up. But like, let's say that I spun it up today. There's no scope in which I'm interested in handing over control to the community on, because if we hand it over too early and the community just wants to push for sort of whatever's shiny and exciting, you may be launching on a foundation that's not really ready. And so as soon as it's ready, let's transition then, because then the community can go after whatever ambitious ideas it wants, and we can enable that, and it can be very, very symbiotic. When to change the tokens and give a specific plan. So so kind of same answer here. We change as soon as it's most advantageous to us, and not before that. And that's not a specific date. And if you're looking for a specific date, sorry, because it doesn't exist. Like, not even for me. And so it's like, as soon as we can, we will. As soon as it makes sense, we will. But there's no sense in speculating on that aspect. How long will it take for a public preview? So we know of one architectural change we're making to the protocol. We'll upgrade that on Polygon, and then we are in a state that the protocol is possible to go live on Ethereum mainnet, pending no major changes need to come back from an audit. And given our previous examples dealing with auditors, we have some of the best engineers, and we typically find things, and we find more things than our auditors do, which is a really good sign. Is the public preview going to be updated? Yes. How do you see the regulatory space in regards to Hifi offerings, and are there any concerns related to this? Absolutely. So so my perspective on the regulatory space, regulators' jobs are to regulate and protect people. So if the United States came out with legislation, we've got a plan. And essentially that plan would be to create an offshore entity that would then contract with our existing Hifi team, and we would turn Hifi as an organization into a dev shop, and then that foreign entity would then manage anything that depending on what the regulation said, to manage compliance with that regulation. It would be disruptive, but it's not going to threaten anything in a material way besides maybe increasing our costs internally for administration, and maybe some legal costs to sort of demonstrate our compliance. We are very interested in being compliant. We can't be mainstream without compliance. So I'm not a doom and gloom I think that the system we're building is going to replace the existing system, and it's going to take government a while to catch up. And them catching up and putting efforts into it is good. And they may misstep for a bit, but I think there will always be ways for us to participate in this open financial world. So I'm not. Am I concerned? I'm only concerned to the point that how it impacts us, and I think we have reasonable steps we can take to be compliant. Are Doug and the team up for the long haul and remain committed? Well, nice thing for this, I can answer in a couple ways. Well, one, I love what I do. I really put my face as a part of the brand, and I'm not really interested in doing anything outside of the confines of Hifi. And so, am I in it for the long haul? I would say so, and I would say that I'm incentivized. So, I continue to vest my own incentives, and so yeah, like we're in it for the long haul. The rest of the team, same thing. We set up incentive programs so that it spans multiple years, and they continue to vest as well. And so they stand to really win big if there's an appreciation in value towards our ecosystem and token. Is there plenty of runway for the long term? I answered that earlier. Yes. We're just below 2 years of runway. A fiat on ramp. Yeah, we could do it. I don't think now's the time to do it, but I think it will come. When Genesis Block Hifi integration, Genesis Block has actually kind of repositioned themselves and doing extremely well, and taking more of an institutional focus rather than a consumer focus, because they've gotten some real good traction there. And so when, well, I'll tell you this, it certainly can't come before we're ready to accept large institutional amounts of money on the protocol. Where do we see the NFT platform lining up to be shipped in its roadmap? I think just as soon as the parts are ready, our focus has entirely been on the lending protocol. As we lend a little bit more bandwidth over to some sort of NFT lending platform, we'll release it. I think we'll play in, we'll enter into the NFT space, and I think that for those who are paying close attention and have kind of a pulse, we'll discover some things sooner than official announcements are made. When say we're V2? Probably not before Hifi V1 ships. Paul is pretty focused. Unless we get some new engineers on the team, we'll continue to keep Paul allocated to the lending protocol, and then he would have some bandwidth to kind of open up for a V2 there. Is the mustache making an appearance again? I haven't thought about it, and if my wife is watching, she hates you for asking. To bypass this pain point, is there a way to get capital on Polygon without using the bridge? Potentially there is some off ramps from certain exchanges, but I'm not aware of which specific ones. And so, one thing that you can consider doing if you've got a group of trusted people, you can try and split the fee and kind of bridge all together and then split it afterwards. It's going to make your taxes really a nightmare. And so I'd hate to be your accountant, but that's one thing you could do. In the video, you mentioned that there's a fee toggle and users can vote to turn it on. Can users also vote to change the fee? I think so. Like the AMM fee would, so there's two fees. There's a fee within the AMM and there's a fee, like an origination fee. And so, yeah, I think the way we have it set up that it's just a on-off switch right now. And, but it's reasonable that we could deploy a version of the protocol that had a different fee if it's not already a variable. Because we haven't deployed on mainnet, it's not super important whether or not it's variable or not today. and that's really just because we have an opportunity to iterate on it before we're really stuck for any long period of time. And given that the balance sheet is upgradable, even if it's not a variable, it is upgradable, so we could change it to whatever was desired. Okay. Are there more sidechains L2s potentially in Hifi's future? Hifi will go wherever the users are. I'm not really interested in holy wars. I will go where there's capital. We have a couple of requirements, like we rely on Chainlink today. We rely on liquidity pools within AMMs, like a Uniswap type fork or Uniswap itself. And so we need liquidity on those side chains, and we need a community that actually wants it there and justifies the expense of running liquidator bots. And so it needs to be profitable for them to participate. And so yeah, we'll just go. I don't care who wins. We'll be there, and we might be a little bit late, so we can maybe save ourselves a little bit of work on which one is the winner. But that just gives us more assurances. Okay, so we're at about an hour. I know I haven't gotten through all these questions, but we will do a summary blog post on all of this. But my intention is here to answer all these questions so that, because I know it's been quite a while since people have had this opportunity. So I'm going to keep going. Feel free to come back, watch the recording, and we'll have time stamped for all these questions as well. So don't feel, if you need to run to another meeting or something, don't feel obligated that you're going to miss something that you couldn't see otherwise. Do you find the time between V0 and V1 launch acceptable? Absolutely, it's acceptable. Was it desirable? Absolutely not. It's the difference between our approach. Like if you don't like our approach, you're going to have a hard time, because I'm uncompromising in this aspect outside of resources. If we were running out of money and we were going to die, yeah, we would get more scrappy and we would cut some corners. We're not desperate. We're not in that position, and we're not going to engage in that type of development. We want to be the real deal, and the real deal does things according to certain principles. And there will be other protocols that have different principles that guide for maybe a more accelerated, exciting type, always trying to get these short-term gains. And we've just decided that because we're not in a desperate position to build the rock solid foundation and then start launching some really interesting stuff on top. And so is right now a little painful to be patient. It depends on your outlook. And but yeah, we missed our own expectations internally in terms of timeline. Why did the team place such a strong emphasis on the safety of user funds? Some are saying if you didn't care so much, you could have released sooner, determined product market fit sooner, and pivot to the next thing if it failed. So this is some good questions. No apology for emphasizing safety of user funds. I don't particularly enjoy the experience of losing money. And so I would like to minimize that, especially if it's avoidable. We could have released sooner. Yeah, that's likely true. Cut corners, you can release sooner. And then pivot to the next thing if it failed. I mean, technically we still have resources if this failed, but I just don't see, like, we've got, you got to look at our whole repertoire of products. We have product market fit with Sabler. And the way we can really add value there, in addition to just continue to support this as a public good, is to extend credit to those who are using it. We've got $1.5 billion worth of value that is unavailable to users of that protocol. And so I feel extremely bullish that adding more utility in sort of a 0-to-1 fashion on top of high conviction assets that are streaming through Sabler is likely going to hit product market fit. I mean, Maybe it doesn't. I won't be very surprised. But given that there's no option for people, we are the 0 to 1 there, and so I think there will be at least some, and I think it's a reasonable bet to make. What's your current opinion about the current status of Hifi's adoption now that it's been live for 48 hours? Well, we've gone so long without a product that a lot of the community is asleep. A lot of the community are just speculating on the token. And so now that there's something there, there's not a big marketing push. There's not, outside of just like our announcements, we're not getting featured in any sort of news articles or any sort of this thing, is because we're not doing anything special that's not been done other places. I think as soon as you do something that's worth writing about, people will do it. Look at our socks stuff, the shenanigans we did with socks and that token. We're quite creative, and I don't doubt that we can write some headlines. It's just explicitly not part of this phase. Like, why? We have drawn a whole bunch of attention to ourselves before the product was ready and tried to build this sort of unsustainable height. And we've been burned by in the past. And now lots of our community doesn't remember mainframe or those experiences, but these experiences inform our decision making today. So while it is not how all of crypto operates, it's how we operate, and it's not just arbitrary because Doug's in a grumpy mood or our marketing team doesn't like to work. It's because it doesn't make sense to allocate resources to getting those headlines before you're ready for them. Have you heard from any devs, teams, VCs about the V1 launch and the feedback? We saw on Discord yesterday, MakerDAO would like to have DAI integrated. So that's nice. We had considered DAI in the first place. There's reasons why we didn't do that right away. And nothing like weird or scary. I see USDC just as a better asset in terms of giving you exactly what you want. I think MakerDAO is doing some very experimental things right now, and it has changed how I think about MakerDAO. If we commit to DAI as sort of our target asset, you're making a multi-year commitment, or at least for a period of time. And while they're doing experimenting with like real world assets as collateral, this is totally changes what MakerDAO is. It's a totally new category of backing, and it's untested. And I think it's okay to be cautious and to want to watch. And so if MakerDAO was single collateral DAI today, it probably would be there. It probably would be what we chose. It's not, and it's just a very different asset, and that's good. They're trying to grow, and it's good for their overall system to like take on these innovative challenges. But I think that we'll see a whole subset of sort of like crypto purist assets where lending protocols where they segment off, where it's just like the safest collateral types, and that way you give sort of institutional players some assurances that they don't get if you add on really experimental, novel, new types of collateral. And so I think we'll see that sort of development. There are many fixed rate lending platforms that have launched before Hifi, and that gives them a certain competitive advantage. Absolutely. While I know there is room for many fixed rate interest platforms, as there is enough market share to go around, I'd like to take a moment and emulate Michael Sabler and say there's no second best, because all want Hifi to be number one in the space across all EVM chains. When Hifi number one lending dApp by TVL. So we want Hifi to be number one. Absolutely. There's no second best. Being the best doesn't mean you have to be first. I think you could look at almost every industry and find that there are people who are later entrants and they get the advantage of watching others and learning from their mistakes and being able to iterate a little faster and stay more nimble. So I think our thought process is here. Yeah, I hope that Hifi becomes so integrated with the future of crypto and our existing financial system that it is something that you forget about because it's baked into all of your financial applications. So, um, yeah, I mean, we share similar hopes. As the swap ratio is determined by vote, yeah, we'll put together a proposal and we'll vote to accept all the changes, similar to Aave. If you go back and look at what happened with Aave, we'll pattern after them. I'm not trying to reinvent any sort of governance wheel. We like things that are predictable, that things that are known, and so um, we'll pattern after Aave. It'll come as a proposal after I've already spoken to investors, I've spoken to members of the community around each parameter that will be proposed there. I haven't spoken to them in a while because our focus is on building, but yeah, I think we will uh, absolutely vote, and it will be a vote with your MFT tokens to accept the proposal for the token swap. So we've got time. What can you expect token economics? Well, you can expect that we employ all of the best things you've seen through DeFi that have worked. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not trying. I really am trying to choose the place that we innovate. This is not one of them. I want to be boring on our token economics in the sense that let's find examples of things that we can trust on, so we can spend our brain cycles, not trying to invent some new novel token economic, but let's go and invent new novel utility on the platform that benefits from these token economics and captures value using existing models of token economics. So the creative stuff, because if you fail on your token economics, you know, it's like your one chance to like get things right. So we want to be a follower there. I'm not reinventing the wheel. What are the obstacles, challenges that Hifi will have to face, according to Doug? Well, honestly, hiring enough engineers in the space. Um, our engineers are extremely valuable, and we need more of them, and that's the biggest challenge for us right now. Um, how do we feel about the price, and what are the predictions? Um, the way I feel about price is uh, in the long term, if we grow a community and we grow utility, I think this is one of the second order side effects of doing things and being successful in this space. What are my predictions? My predictions are that if our community is one that grows and promotes itself, one that if we're a community of builders, then we will be best positions to capture value wherever the broader market goes. We are somewhat subject to broader macroeconomics and things that are happening with kind of the big dogs of Ethereum and Bitcoin. But I think that the opportunity for upside is usually larger with these growth teams within the space. Our new hires onboarding plan, I talked about. We have a new math specialist on the team. We also have a new accountant that we stole from one of the big four accounting firms here in the United States, KPMG, and so those are going good. Time expectations of token swap next year. How is the new Polygon edition received? It's probably a better question for you guys to answer. In terms of my own perspective, it's met my expectations. I've been more surprised that people have been more hesitant to bridge assets over to Polygon, and what that tells me is that our community didn't have as much overlap onto Polygon. I expected that people already had assets there, but generally, I think we need to cross-pollinate more with the existing Polygon ecosystem, so that people who have assets there can come and test it out and try it and play with it. And then we need to figure out within our community which exchanges are actually offboarding capital over. And maybe one of the things we need to do is add Polygon as an asset for collateral, because then there's just one token you have to bridge if you want to go over and borrow. Though there's only one token you have to bridge if you want to pool or lend, but you still need some Matic, so you always have that. Are people enthusiastic? Generally, I see the state of our community is in a really healthy place. There's some healthy skepticism on the team and timeline. That's good. Up to a certain point, I think the people who are just looking for short-term returns, I won't cater to that part of our community, and we've had sort of like a washing out of a lot of those types of people. Um, and I feel like the community is full of people who are um, really supportive of the team, that are understanding of what it takes to build a protocol that hopefully will define a segment of DeFi, and so I think uh, uh, enthusiastic. I think of maybe a little bit more excitement, but like sort of just like I am now. Like there are really exciting things to look forward to. Is the excitement right now? It's not my judgment that the excitement is right now, and I think that's okay. And so I feel like the community is in the same spot. And we all wish that the exciting times were right now, but uh, you know, in life, usually it takes a lot of work before you graduate from high school or college, or getting certification for your trade. These things take work. We're putting in the work. Why are you secretive about the roadmap things? We're secretive about roadmap things because it is very important how you deliver a message in addition to what that message is. And so, given that our bandwidth is somewhat constrained, I'm unwilling to put out news and sort of ambitions if we're not executing on what we have at a rate that makes it reasonable to expect we could do other things. So, uh, I think that's why is it's unreasonable to think that we can take on more until we have the ability to. Now, some bandwidth is being freed up on the team, so maybe we can do some more sort of ambitious marketing around some ideas that are coming. But generally speaking, announcing things early. It's sort of like I think we announced the token swap too early. But we wanted to rebrand, and we wanted this new product to have a brand of its own, and it made sense that like why would we have a token called MFT if you're Hifi now, and, and so some information has to leak out earlier than others, but it just all needs to make logical sense. It needs to be publicly defensible, and so if I shared every idea that was a great idea, half of them will never happen, and it's not good to sort of like say you're going to do something and never execute on it. How are you going to push the project? And there's some other marketing questions, and this is pretty much it. My expectation is this: if you can do things on Hi-Fi that you can't do anywhere else in DeFi, I think that will be exciting. I think that will be able to get headlines for free because there's stories and narratives to be told. I'm an excellent storyteller. I love a lot of the guidance that I use in my own personal life is how can I make this story better, and so I think. I think that's my intention. Is there will be stories that we can tell as a community that no other protocol will be able to tell, and so I hope you're excited for some stuff that is going to be novel. It's going to make people scratch their head. It's going to be funny. It's going to be something that defines us in our culture and gives us something to talk about. It's just like what, that's really cool. In the same way that Uniswap has their socks token. That's right up my alley. I love socks. I love what they did there. I hope we'll do our own stuff there. Now's not the time, but there'll be stuff to talk about. It'll be stuff that people want to talk about, and I think that's what will put it as at the forefront of the conversations around fixed rate lending. And interesting collateral types will do that too. So um, I think that wraps it up. Let me just check the comments real quick. Rather than trying to read through everything, if something I didn't get to, throw it in the chat right now, and I'll try and get it to it. I think um, Was I really not aware of the KuCoin listing? I don't lie. No, I found out via Twitter. So I don't know what to tell you. If you don't trust me, I don't know how you're participating in this community. But like, I'm a pretty straight shooter. So, uh, all right. Well, I think that wraps this up. Thank you, everyone, to our community, people all around the world tuning in. Really appreciate all the support. And if there are questions that you didn't get answered here, throw them into Discord, and I'll try and do sort of a follow up, and I'll include it in our write up on the blog post. Thank you. We'll talk to you hopefully soon.